Ryan here at Signature Edits, and inside this video I'm going to show you my wedding editing workflow and how I get through an entire wedding in just a couple of hours. Not days, but hours. Alright, so we're going to get into editing in about 2 seconds here, but really quickly, because this video is long, sometimes you might want to skip forward, make things move faster inside of YouTube. You could do that by holding the Shift key and pressing period on your keyboard. That will speed up playback. And likewise, if I'm going too fast and you want me to slow down at a specific place, you can do that by pressing Shift and the comma button on your keyboard, okay? So Shift, comma will slow down, Shift period will speed up, and that way you can adjust your viewing experience to get through this monstrous video at your own pace, okay? Without further ado, I'm going to walk you through it. First off, I've already culled my photos, but I will show you how. It's just that there's no reason for me to go through that whole process with you. It takes about 20 minutes for me, but let me show you exactly what I do. I start off with all of my RAWs. So let's just look at the rejects right now because there's more of those. And I open those up in Photo Mechanic. Now, the reason I do that instead of Lightroom, which is where I do absolutely everything else, is because Photo Mechanic is much faster at actually scrolling through the images. And you'll see what I mean in a second here. So let's say that this didn't say rejects, it just said all of the photos. I would go through, and literally as I'm scrolling with my arrow keys, I can cycle between images, and every time I like an image, I hit one, and the rest of them are going to be rejects. So I'd literally start off, and I'll just cull some for you right now so you can see kind of the speed that I work at. I'm literally going to go through, and I'll take one photo from every kind of interesting photo that I see. So of those, I like that one the most. I like that shot. That shot's not really worth keeping because I have one like it already. Perfect. And anything that is kind of a keeper kind of photo and is unique, I'm not really interested in a lot of repetitivity. I'll just go ahead and grab it. So you'll see this is kind of the speed that I'm working at. I'll just grab the best one from every kind of angle. I want all the variety. I don't kind of cheap out on my photos or get rid of photos that aren't good, but I'm not going to grab 4 photos of them doing cheers. I'll just grab one that is a nice one, unless there happens to be 2 great moments, say a laugh and also just a nice serious one or something like that. Those photos I don't really like so much, so I'll just keep going. That's all right. That's great, but the videographer got in the way. Hashtag blessed. Okay, there you go. Ring shot. I don't need too many ring shots, but I'll kind of grab my favorites out of these. So I gave them 3 ring shots. That's enough, unless I find one that I like more than those. Perfect. That's a great shot. So that's kind of the process that I'm actually going through and culling the photos. You can see it's pretty quick. I'm not taking a ton of time in between to decide what I'm using. It's kind of instinctual. And I'm just doing a 1 for every time that I actually like the photo. Now, I've already been through these, so I'm a little bit familiar with what's coming, and so I can skip ahead a little bit quicker, but you get my drift. That normally takes about 20-30 minutes to go through all the photos of, how many do we have here? 2,264 rejects. I think I kept about 600, so 1 in 4 photos kind of roughly. Now, after that's done, I take all of the photos that I marked as keepers, so all of the ones marked with a 1. You can do the same thing in Lightroom, exactly the same way. It'll just be a little bit slower when you actually try and scroll through the photos. I take all of the 1s, and I separate them by themselves. Then I right-click, and I go Copy Selected Photos. And I copy them to a folder marked Selects. And all of those get moved into there, and I go Move Photos, Delete Originals. So what it's going to do is just move them into this new folder for me, and now everything left in that folder is going to be a reject. And so all of those photos, all of these ones right here, this other 2,000, I'm going to leave in that folder as the rejects. I don't delete any of them. I can always come back. So let's say that as I was culling, I missed an important moment, or maybe this actually sometimes happens is you'll do a family photo and you'll grab 3 different ones and find out that dad's eyes are closed in all 3. Well, then I have the photos as a backup to go and reference. Okay, you probably know what culling is like, so I'm not going to show you any more than that. I think that's enough. From here, I open up Lightroom, and I make a brand new catalog. So I make a new catalog for absolutely every single wedding, every shoot, everything, because that way the entire shoot is going to be contained in the client's folder. It's all organized. I don't have different weddings mixed up together, and I can keep track of things a lot more simply. So I'm going to choose a different catalog. We'll create a new one, call it their names. Perfecto. And then we'll put that into their client folder just like this. Create. Once Lightroom figures out what's going on, we're going to grab those photos, grab all the selects, just drag that folder into the library. That'll open up our import panel. Now, I apply a preset on import, and sometimes I'll build smart previews, but I actually find with the newest version of Lightroom, it's doing very well without them, so I'm not going to bother for the sake of this demonstration. We'll save some time there. So I am applying signature edits clean and classic. As I continue to edit weddings and I look back on my weddings and different work from the past, I'm finding more and more often that I wish I hadn't used filters that were really cool at the time, but in hindsight, 2 years later, 3 years later, all of a sudden they look dated, right? So the new pack that we have from Signature Edits that we just are working on now is called Clean and Classic, and the purpose of this pack is, you guessed it, to make those photos look really clean, really classic edits, really timeless, and especially for weddings or any kind of historical documentary shoots, these are going to make sure that your photos don't look way too super edited and dated a couple years down the road. So I'm going to apply just my basic classic preset, and I have a few variations of that. We're going to click import. Simple as that. So this is going to take a minute or two, and then I'm going to go through the wedding, and we'll see how long it takes. So it's currently 6:17 p.m. So I'm just going to go through and edit these photos for you live. This might be a very long video. We might have to separate it up into parts, but I just want to show you that it's possible to do this without it taking days. So this is with the preset applied. Here is just the blank. So you can see that it is very, very subtle. It's just bringing out some of the colors, flattening things out a little bit. What else are we doing? We're applying a custom profile that we've created for this pack. And the beauty of these profiles inside of Lightroom, if you've ever used them or not used them, is it's kind of like an Instagram filter-esque style slider that you've got here. You can control the amount of the profile that you want to affect the image, which is really, really powerful because it makes it a lot more simple to dial in the preset. If you find the preset is too strong, well, that's great. You just take the amount slider, you slide it back down. So now I'm going to go through. It is 6:18. Let's see how long it takes to get through this wedding together. So at least for the beginning part, I will kind of give you my thought process as I'm going through. I'm using hotkeys. I'm using keyboard shortcuts to kind of speed up things as I'm actually doing this. So I'm pressing Shift and the plus and minus keys to adjust my exposure, and that is 90% of the editing that I'm actually doing to these photos, guys. It's just adjusting the exposure, making sure the white balance is good, and if your preset is good, you don't have to use this preset, you don't have to use ours. If you have a preset that is good, it's going to do 90% of the work for you, and then you just sort of polish it from there. And so all I'm doing with this little gradient filter is I'm just adding some light onto this side because the window is clearly here, so these guys are darker than this guy here. Just go through just like that, and wherever there's a white balance issue or an exposure issue, so in this one, you can see his shirt is pretty blown out. We'll take the highlights down, we'll adjust this and use our Clean and Classic Desaturate the Blues. And you can see it took the blues right out of his shirt. That looks perfect. And so we're not spending too much time on any one particular photo, just dialing things in. Perfect. Their skin looks a little red and a little dark in this, so I have a Clean and Classic Skin Plus variation, and that'll just brighten things very slightly. So you can see if you have presets that you're used to, and they're honed kind of the way that you want them, it makes the whole process a lot simpler. Now I don't like this window, just the tiniest edge of it, so I'll crop that out. One step at a time. Skin Plus. There we go. And because I have in this set 589 photos, like that is a lot of photos. So if I'm finding one is just really fighting me, it's not looking the way that I want it to. Like this one, the skin is kind of silly looking. It's just not working. So we're going to try maybe going with the desaturated blues. See if that helps a little bit. Take our amount slider, take that down. Yeah, that's looking a lot more natural. Perfect. Next. And we'll just copy it over because we're in kind of the same light, same scene. So hopefully that'll get us most of the way there. Adjust the exposure, and next. So again, I'm just using Command-C and Command-V on a PC. That will be slightly different. I think it's Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste my settings from the previous photo. You can also use the sync down right here between the photos, but it's just easier to not have to actually use your mouse and to just keep your hands on the keyboard themselves. And if a photo looks good, the exposure is already kind of the way I like it. I don't even need to adjust it at all. I'll just skip to the next one. So again, this one, too dark on this side. We'll just grab that gradient. Keep on going. This one we can copy because it's the same set. Only, of course, I didn't copy my gradient, so wasn't thinking there. good. So this one has a lot of contrast. We'll take our highlights down, exposure up a little bit. That's looking pretty darn good, I think. And I'll just crop it so that this lamp isn't showing up. Great. Add a little dehaze here maybe because of the window. Yeah, it looks all right. A little crooked. We'll fix that. In the crop tool, I'm just using the R key to navigate there and back. This one, the white balance doesn't look right. So we'll warm that up a little bit. And the reason that this photo isn't working, I think, is because the ring in the center here is not the brightest part of the photo. Genuinely, your eyes are drawn to the brightest part in the photo. So you can see as I take the exposure down for everything else, like that's obviously way too far. But now the photo just seems to make a lot more sense because our eyes are drawn to the brightest part. So here's before and after. Great, little contrasty again, so we'll just take some of that out. Perfect. I just wish Lightroom were faster because that's the only thing is sometimes half of your editing time is spent just waiting for Lightroom to load. Leave me a comment below that says you're with me and this is not just my own personal thing. I'm going to take this down a little bit because it's looking a little intense for my liking. There we go. And because this is it's shot in the same room, I'm just going to take that, paste it. See how we're looking. Adjust that so it's straight. Good. Same dealio. Except for this time we have to take our exposure down. You can see these presets just out of the box look really, really quite natural. Definitely they're edited, but they don't look super edited, and the kind of look that it's applying is not something that's going to be dated because it's not super stylistic. It's just a basic, let's add some pop, add some contrast, keep the colors looking pretty natural. Now, I love this dress shot. I'm going to invert that. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding some whites there to make that the brightest part of the image, right? I'm going to take our contrast back up, add some texture, a little bit of clarity, maybe. Something like that, and darken everything down. And I might even brush a little bit more on there just to emphasize the dress. Same thing, just take the whites up, make it pop. There we go. So it doesn't really look edited. If it does look edited, you've kind of probably gone too far. I want to keep things looking pretty bright, pretty natural. Actually, bright is optional. Natural is not. It needs to look normal. If your people look like aliens, you've gone too far. That's a little contrasty. We'll take that down a bit. Looking good. Maybe add the skin bump there. Skin bump again. Come on. Now the only problem with this is I'm also obviously recording the screen, so that's why we're getting some delays too. My computer is working hard. That might be a little bit too far, actually. We'll just keep it without. Okay, so her skin's looking a little bit odd, so what I'm going to do here is just grab my adjustment brush. Just going to brush on her skin really, really quickly. It's going to be a basic brush that I'm not going to put a whole lot into, so it's going to be pretty transparent. We're just going to take our clarity down to smooth out our skin, bring the contrast down. There we go. So here's before, and here's after. You can see we just kind of mellowed out those weird tones going on in her skin. Great, pretty contrasty. We'll bring that down a little bit. And this weird banding, that's just because my computer is struggling to keep up, but it'll go away as it loads. Looks pretty good. And so again, as I make adjustments, depending on the scene, what I will make sure to do is copy it. So I'm going to get this photo kind of where I like it here. Maybe bring the highlights down a little bit, exposure up. Okay, let's say that's good. Then I copy it and I have it kind of in my back pocket for when I need it. So I'll apply it to this photo right away, save me some time. So as you can see, it's pretty basic stuff. It's nothing really surprising, probably to you. But it's all about the workflow, getting the presets that you like, that just kind of work out of the box. That's why we've gone ahead and made our presets. The reason they exist is because I got so tired of trying to use Visco and Maston, and they were great presets that other people got awesome results out of, but they just didn't work for me. Or more so, they would just sometimes work and sometimes not work, and it wasn't consistent, and it would drive me crazy because some shoots it would look great, others everything would just look like garbage, and I got so tired of the garbage that I was like, maybe I can make something that will work for me. And so I did. I made something that fits me. It might not fit you, but if it does, you're welcome to have it. That's why we share these presets. So I will actually have a download link below if you want to get a free sample of this exact pack. We'll have the first clean and classic preset that you can download, and then if you want the full pack, you can grab that too. And the difference is the pack obviously has these different variations, and we might add some more by the time you watch this video. It also includes adjustment brush presets. So we'll really quickly show you these. We've got all of these different adjustment brush presets depending on what you want to do. So I'm sure that I'll make use of these later on in this wedding, but because we're in the preps, we're not going to be adding a lot of texture to things or really touching up unless they have a close-up portrait or something like that. Right now, most of what we're doing is just getting the colors right. We're going to do a skin bump here. Looks good. Getting the colors right, getting things dialed in, adjusting our white balance. And even like back to the whole Visco note, if you are a Visco user or a preset user of any kind and you find that your presets aren't working, the first thing that you should always check is the white balance, because oftentimes you think a preset isn't working, but really it's just because your white balance is out. So let's say that my white balance was up here. Well, I mean, that actually doesn't look too bad, but oftentimes you'll find that the light just really affects or shows up differently depending on what your white balance is. Let's reset that. There we go. Looks so much more natural. So it's not necessarily the preset that's not working. It might just be the white balance and the exposure. You don't have those dialed in right. And never expect your presets to work 100% of the time across every single image. So for example, this preset on this particular image looks pretty crap, but I'm sure if I were to grab other presets, they probably wouldn't work either, right? Out of the gate. So especially when you have different mixed lighting and stuff like that. Let's go back here. We'll do a skin bump. When you have different mixed lighting, super high contrast scenes, you're going to have a harder time getting things to look perfect right out of the gate. You're going to need some tweaking because, for example, here there's some kind of a tungsten light that's hitting this girl. Oh, we've got a weird adjustment brush I've been copy pasting. Haha. So I'm going to have to fix that. So we'll just take that down very slightly, contrast down, whites up. One of my favorite things to do with a brush that just makes, see how things kind of pop out, but it doesn't really look obviously brushed and affected. Grab that, blend it in. Okay, something like that. That's still too contrasty, so we'll see what we can do. We can grab our highlights, bring those down, bring the blacks up. We don't want it to look HDR either, but and then maybe a little bit less saturation. So obviously I spent quite a bit of time on that one photo, but I'll make up for it in other ones. There we go. That looks great. Looks good. We could maybe do the skin bump, see if that works better. Get a little bit of dynamic range back in the bathtub by lowering our exposure a little bit. Yeah, I like that. Okay, skin bump, copy paste. Toot. Hopefully the sound effects and my narration are not driving you absolutely insane. I'm doing my best to kind of just narrate and let you know my thought process. Hopefully it's helpful and not a hindrance and a distraction. So again, because she's dark, I'm just going to take my favorite brush in the world, which is contrast down, whites up a little bit, just brush on there. And you see how she pops, but it doesn't really look affected. I don't have to be super careful about my mask because you can't really see it so much, but it makes a big difference. That looks good. Maybe a skin bump and we're done. Yeah, that's actually slightly too far, so we'll just take our exposure up. And it's all about getting used to just seeing things and seeing whether it's natural or not. So not to say I'm an expert at this, because you might be better than me and see some of these photos and be like, why is he doing that? It looks terrible. Well, as you get better and better, and I'm still improving, you start to see when things look natural and when you've just taken them way too far. So there might have been a time where once I had this happening, you know, like really extreme stuff, and I thought that looked natural, whereas now I know, okay, this skin is way too far, it looks unnatural, or I've pushed the shadows too far. It's just kind of getting used to it. And one thing that can be really helpful is actually comparing your edits to somebody you like, whose work you follow, just side by side, import them into Lightroom and actually just take a look and kind of try and gauge, okay, does this look the same? Why or why not? What is it that I'm doing too much of or not doing enough of? Now I need to stop talking because the multitasking is just really slowing me down. White balance is a little warm there, and there's too much magenta. That's why their skin is so red. So we'll try and find a sweet spot. Maybe a little bit colder. Now, if you can't find it, sometimes doing the auto in Lightroom will work, and sometimes it won't. So be warned. Most of the time I find that Lightroom's auto white balance is more accurate than the in-camera. However, the reason that this particular scene is not working so well is because these walls are blue. And so Lightroom's trying to make this wall white when in reality it was always meant to be blue. Try that. It's okay. And sometimes, you know what, if I'm just fighting with an image and it just doesn't look good no matter what I do, well, I'm okay with deleting it once in a while. If it's an incredibly important image, well, sure, of course. But you see how much of a difference the white balance made? So when it was up here, it just looked really unnatural. The skin looked weird, but you take it back down and all of a sudden it just feels normal again. And I'm going to go back and adjust this one to normal. See how much of a difference that makes. It's absolutely everything. White balance, most powerful Lightroom tip there is. Let's get that right around there. Good. We could definitely do the skin bump on this particular image. And that looks way too far. We need a quarter skin bump. Something like that, maybe. It's all going to depend because the issue with this particular photo, I'm actually going to delete it because I don't think it's that great of a photo anyways. The issue is that all of this blue light is reflecting off of these walls and getting onto her skin. And so that combined with the camera not really knowing what's going on with the white balance is just creating this kind of weird sort of mucky look to her skin. Okay, we're going to copy absolutely everything in here. We're still looking a little weird. You see what I mean? I speak about it and then it happens. It was prophetic. I set myself up to experience this hardship. There we go. It's looking okay. All right, so now we are through the preps, and I pasted that by accident. We'll just adjust, and it's basically more of the same. So we're at 6:34 now. When did we start? 6:19. So we've been about 10 minutes, and we are, how many photos in? Solid 66 photos, 10%, so we should be done in a couple of hours at this rate. So we're going to add some contrast there. It looks a little HDR to me, make things darker. One other thing that you might find is messing up your photos, maybe, or maybe it's just me, is oftentimes you want to make skin brighter than it was naturally taken, or than it naturally was in the photo. So for instance, if you are shooting an image, we'll find an example here for you soon, I'm sure. But if you shoot an image and that image was taken of a person standing in full shadow and you try and brighten up the exposure to the point that their skin looks like this guy's right here, really nice and bright, you'll find things just look really weird and there's just something off about it, but you can't put your finger on it. And the reason is because the skin was never meant to look that way in the first place. When you see the image, your brain subconsciously knows there's something not right about this. Something isn't, it's just off. And so oftentimes it might be just because you've pushed the shadows too far, you've taken the exposure too far up, or things just aren't looking the way they naturally looked. So you can push things, right? Like this image originally looked like this. I could maybe brighten the background a little bit here. I can take it that far, but if I try and take it too far, it's going to start to feel really weird because your eyes kind of know. They're very smart and your brain is always subconsciously analyzing things and it says, something's going on here. So you can see how nice. I absolutely love, 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 love this new preset. Definitely my favorite that we've come out with so far because it's so easy and it just looks so good and the pop is so nice. And what I really love is this new slider. So being able to actually adjust the intensity of the overall look just like that is amazing, especially when you find, you know, these photos look pretty good just as is with the preset. But if you find it's just like, oh, I wish that it were stronger, well, it's super easy to do. Okay, so we're going to maybe use the desaturate blues because there's some blue. There we go. That's looking more natural. Maybe not so much blue desaturated, but a little bit. Okay, next. Looks good. Another advantage of just doing kind of clean, classic edits is that you don't need to worry. Now this white balance is way, way out. I can tell you right now it's too green. Let's just see what it looks like with nothing. Yeah, okay, so you can see how far out we've gone from kind of natural, quote unquote. So we'll take that, make it more blue, add some magenta. It's like mojo mixed with magenta. And also it's too dark, so we'll take that. We're going to take our shadows back down. There we go. You see how much more natural that looks just by adjusting a few teeny little things. Anyways, I feel like I was talking about something important and I totally lost track of what it was. So if you were hanging on my every word, I apologize. Good, looks good. That looks pretty decent. Too bright though, not as bright as it, or brighter than it would have been in real life. So I'm just going to try and brighten it up to the right amount. And guys, I apologize for every time that my narration stops making sense, just because I'm not a natural multitasker here. I'm trying to do it for the benefit of everybody, but at the same time, it's not my natural forte. So we'll take our contrast down a little bit to just brighten up the back. My favorite brush. Now, if you wanted to, you could take a new brush, and we could go to add texture, and we could just paint that on the flowers. But I think that this preset, we've already got quite a bit of texture, quite a bit of contrast going on, so we don't necessarily need that. I can maybe take my highlights down a little bit though. Looking a little bit bright there. Okay, that's good enough. I know we have tons of details, so I'm not really stressing over one specific one. And if it doesn't look awesome, I can always delete it because we got lots for this wedding. Wunderbar. And you might be sitting here going, why on earth did they take so many details? And I will tell you why. The first thing is, when I got married, it answered so many questions for me about why photographers stress about these kind of things, because all of a sudden I actually cared about them. I was like, how do we not get any pictures from our wedding? We have 0 pictures. Oh, I have to reset this brush. We have 0 pictures of our entire reception setup. We didn't get any wides of it. There's the head table we didn't really capture. Just things that, as a photographer previously to this, I didn't really notice or think about getting for couples. Once you get married, you realize, oh man, I wish I could remember those parts of the day because I wasn't paying attention to how the whole room looked, and it really sucks not to have a wide of the room. Or it really sucks not to have a setup of our, whatever, tea station, whatever it was. So that is first reason. And the second reason that you really should take tons of detail photos if you have the ability and the chance. We're just going to brighten that up. And that's looking a little too contrasty, so we'll dial that down. Good. The second reason is because magazines absolutely look for details. That's what future brides are looking for, right? They're not really so interested in your photo shoots as they are in the actual details to get inspiration for their own weddings. And so when magazines look at publishing your work, that's what they're after. They are looking for details. And he forgot how to talk in the middle of that sentence. Just rotate that. So this one I might not actually keep. It's kind of a nice detail, but at the same time, you can see there's mixed lighting, window light, tungsten light. No matter what I do with the white balance, it's going to look garbage. I can try this desaturate blues. That's still not really great. It's weird. It's very, very weird and unnatural. I'm going to keep this. It's going to be for the couple, not for me, because you know what? They wanted this detail and planned it, and it's unfortunate, but I don't really like it. But we'll keep it in there for them. Now, same goes for this. Obviously, we've got really weird lighting going on, some mixed light. We could take a gradient filter, grab it, reset that brush, just add some blue on that side to try and kind of counter it, and then bring the temperature back up, our exposure up. It's looking better. Not great, but better. That's why it's so important to get it in camera. If you find that photos aren't really looking the way you want, the presets aren't looking the way you want, well, again, look at it in camera. Does it look great in camera? If it does, well then almost any preset is going to do a good job. If it doesn't, well, then almost any preset is going to struggle to fix a bad photo. Trust me, I have lots of bad photos. So that cake, we've got some weird magenta-ness going on, you can see. So we'll take our saturation. I'll just exaggerate it. So we're going to get rid of all that nonsense. Maybe even a little bit of the reds. I want to get rid of as much as I can without making it really weird. Brighten it back up. That's kind of a trick for you. Sometimes helps you get away with it. And again, with the weird white balance, it's so sad because donuts are beautiful. Donut mess with me. Okay, reset that brush. And we're going to do the same trick. Get rid of some of that magenta, some of the yellowness. Yellow or YOLO? Ha ha ha. Something like that. It's not great, but we do what we can. I'm a photographer, not a magician. Good. And that's why you take lots of photos, because if one doesn't work out, you've got a million more. That looks okay. Again, we've got this stupid magenta nonsensical nonsense. So we'll just take our saturation down in those. See if we can't get rid of some of it. Another cake shot. Another day. Brighten that up. I'm going to use my spot removal tool just to get rid of this ugly distraction. That looks... Ooh, no, I can still see that. That was not good. Try one of those. Try heal. Take our feather up. See if that helps. Move it around. Sometimes moving the point can help. Still looks really obvious and I hate it. Come on, Lightroom. That is not even a little bit good. Is our opacity not showing up properly? Let's try that again. Too much feather, I guess. Well, what we can do is we can take an adjustment brush on this wall. We can take that, reset it, take our clarity all the way down. Now, of course, yeah, don't want to get the flower by mistake. I'm erasing that, holding Alt. And we can try and blend that a little bit. I have a finite amount of patience with said things, so we'll see. Take our contrast down, maybe shadows down. Oh boy, he said. You know what, I think it's still better than it was before, so we'll just keep going. Because I don't want to bore you. Normally I would take another second to work on that, but I'll go back after, so you don't have to sit through it. Love. Just how beautiful, right? Here's before, here's after. It doesn't take much, but it kind of adds just some magic, some saturation in the reds without it looking way too saturated, some pop without it looking way too edited. I love it. Oh, go back here, just make sure our lines are all straight. That is one thing that drives me crazy is when lines aren't straight. Good. That looks good. We're just blazing. 645. Take that, and what I'm going to do is just brighten up this end of the image. We can use a gradient filter. Contrast down, whites up. Bam. And you see how we kind of just, the image makes more sense before, after. We can darken it down. Straighten this up. This may or may not work with this particular shot. Yeah, I'm satisfied. Good, except for it's dark again down here. I'm just going to reset this. And a fun fact for you, if you don't use these kind of filters very often, whatever you set it to before you actually make the effect, it's going to keep that as a preset for you for the next time that you apply an effect. So for instance, if I applied it now, it'll have the same settings until I change it again before I actually make that change. Hopefully that made sense. So for instance, if I adjusted this right now, next time, it'll have the same settings when I do an adjustment layer. It's a little too far. I want to keep it natural, but I think that's pretty good. Hey, here's before, here's after. And we do have some weird white balance stuff going on. Again, I'm not going to worry about it too much, but we'll take our saturation down a little bit, maybe bump it up to try and kind of mitigate it and zoom in. This is out of focus. I'm actually going to delete that shot. If the writing isn't visible and we've got these weird distractions on the wall, what's the point? And we'll just take our greens. They look really weird, so we'll add some saturation to them. And I think it's because this shot is just too cool. We'll warm it up, see what happens. Maybe. It's just not vibing with the rest of the images, you know? Maybe take our effect preset, turn that up. Yeah, that's better. Before, after. That might be a little bit heavy-handed. We'll copy this because it's kind of the same sort of setup. I think the reason that the colors are different is actually because the lens is different. Because this one was shot on a 35. What were we on before? No, 35. I'm just SOL. Who knows why? Not me. If you do, leave it in the comments below. You will change my life. Okay, so this one, I can actually increase the effect, I think, and that'll just make it pop more. Before, after. Really, really beautiful. So if you have hazy photos, this amount slider is going to get rid of that haze, which is awesome. I think I need lens corrections on this, if they aren't on already. Yes, they are. Maybe add a little bit more. Good. Center this. Now, I'm kind of iffy on the blue skies. It's like, on the one hand, it was a nice day. I don't want to pretend that it wasn't. On the other hand, sometimes it's just way less distracting to do that. So, you know, you're getting rid of the blue sky, but you're also making it more cohesive. Now we have just kind of two tones going on, these warms and these green tones, warms, the oranges, the reds, rather than the blues as well. It gets just a little cluttered. Sometimes if your photos are feeling strange, it's because there's just too, or cluttered, busy, they don't have that magic. You'll notice that when you look at people whose photos really just rock, oftentimes they're monochromatic, just one kind of color family, or they have complementary color families going on. And that's why they look so good. Ooh, that sky's very blown out. So again, if I get rid of the blues, you won't notice it's so blown out, hopefully. That's too much. We're just going to stick with it, embrace the blown out sky, because, you know, or we could do that. That's what I'm going to do. That way we still have the blue of the mountains, but it's not so distracting with the weird, ugly sky. It's funny because a camera with more dynamic range, sometimes it can work against you, because where it would normally be kind of blown out and really nice, now it's kind of distracting and sort of blown out, but not totally blown out. Now here's an example of where we could use one of these brushes, water, sky, pop. Take that, put that on there. Good, take this little triangle. Fun fact for you, if you take this guy, you can actually dial in the amount of your adjustment layer. So you can use that with any adjustment layer. And our white balance is very cold in this photo, so we're going to need to warm it up. Come on. That's maybe a little too far. The white balance is key. If we can get it right, life is a dream. And I'm actually going to not do that, but bear with me. We'll brighten this up maybe a little bit. Add some dehaze. That's not working. I don't want it looking too HDR, but I also want it to have a little bit more pop than what it has right now. Okay. That is not a great photo. I'm not super happy with it, but at the same time, it's not essential to their wedding day. So I'm going to focus and spend more time on the photos of them than on a random photo of scenery. Okay, so that, I went too far, too cold. Take that, something like this. Okay, looks all right. We could adjust our amount, see what happens when we take that up or down. I think it was pretty good where it was. We can maybe add some saturation to the blues. That might make it look better. And this is all part of the process, right? Just sort of, I feel like the sky is more natural, slightly more towards this end of the blue, towards the purpley blue. But I don't want to push it too far. When you're editing, take your effect and then dial it back to where you can't see it, and dial it back even a little bit more, just for safety. That, I feel, is a good rule, at least for me, because I tend to look at things in the moment, it looks good. Later on, it looks crap. But I do like it better with the different blues. I hope you do too. If not, let me know about it in the comments below. Basically, if you haven't commented or liked this video yet and you're still watching, please do. I would appreciate it. It would mean the world to me. Just helps get the word out there. Lets me know that this is actually resonating with you. Okay, so these blues are looking weird. We're going to try the desaturated. There we go. I think that's better, and we'll crop out most of the sky because really the shot is focusing on this planty thing. The word of the day, planty thing. That looks pretty good. I could probably crop in just to get rid of this weird negative space on his left. Good. Now the shot of Grandma. Classic bad lighting where she's in shade and then the background is full sun. It's going to be very hard because the white balance is going to be different with them, with her and the background, that is. Oh, come on. Come on, you. And you kind of have to choose between person or background. And this might be one of those situations where, like I told you, it looks kind of unnatural because I just took it too far. Because your eye knows, like, why is she so bright? It shouldn't be happening. So we'll just dial that back. Good. I love shooting in this direction because the background is dark behind him, not bright. You'll have a way easier time if your background is dark behind your subjects than if it's blown out. That's where you lose contrast. Life is just weird and awkward, and it's hard to get right. Spoken by someone who has screwed this up many a time. Okay, so that... Did I lose my kind of purpley blues? Yes, I did. See how much of a difference that makes? You can maybe take the saturation down on them, though. I think that's distracting in that particular photo. Now, I don't like this shot. I just don't. I think it's kind of... I'm not feeling it. I might delete it. We'll keep going for now. So before I'm actually done the full edit, I'm going to go through these photos in the library view and just kind of scroll past, and every time something sticks out to me, that's kind of my like fail safe and gives me a second fresh perspective. And if you hang in there, you too will see my fail safe process. It doesn't take long, maybe 15, 20 minutes to go through the images a second time, and things, you'd be surprised, things that you missed the first time that you're like, how the heck did I think that looked good when I went through it the first time? So this photo, super weird. I'm going to... am I going to delete it? I don't know. I kind of don't want to. What's going on? Why does it look so odd? Take that down. You know what? It's the dehaze. Sometimes dehaze is your friend. Sometimes it just does strange things and it doesn't work properly. So if you find in your life that your photo does not look good, try the dehaze. That might be the issue. Take this, and our white balance still, something is not right. It's hard because if you actually look at the original image, that's kind of what it looked like. There's not a whole lot of color going on, and it feels sort of odd to your eyes. But that's not the fault of the edit. So definitely referencing your before and after. And yeah, you can do that with the backslash key, but sometimes I find it doesn't work on my version of Lightroom. This is a better photo than the first one. But I think they actually came back later and shot one when it wasn't the middle of the day. So I'm not going to stress too much about this. But we do need to add some magenta to this photo, get the greens right. Good. How are we doing? We're like a quarter of the way. It's 6:55, 135 photos. Yeah, about a quarter. Good guess. Okay, this one definitely is too warm, so we're going to take our white balance down. There we go, somewhere around there. Take our texture up and just see how that looks. That looks like nonsense, but what we can do is use our add texture brush, paint it onto these flowers. Grab our whites, pull those up just a little bit. So you see here's before, here's after. Really just makes them pop a little bit. You can dial it in too with this triangle, take that. Maybe I wanted less or more of that effect. And of course it's slow to show up because I'm screencasting right now. But I'll take this, warm it up just a little bit. Too much. And I think this might be one of the ones I need to desaturate the blues. Maybe not that far, but halfway. There we go. Good. Again, just a little bit of dehaze, and we should be decent. Dehaze, de-dece. It's looking pretty weird. So maybe instead of the dehaze, we'll try adding more of our preset. Take the dehaze back down. I think that's more natural. Noonday is not the best time to get landscapes, so I'm not super worried about it. Again, the more essential photos I'm going to spend more time on, which is photos of them. Take that down. Take this up. White balance looks a little warm. A little too much magenta. People with red hair, I feel like photos of them, they just look better. I don't know. It's kind of this weird, I might just be a total crackpot, but I feel like something about it. Lightroom just likes people with red hair. That's it. Lightroom is predisposed to make people with red hair have better photos. That's nice. Oh darn, her eyes are closed. You know what? Am I going to still keep it? Yeah, I think so. Because I know there wasn't an alternate, and I feel like as the couple, I would personally like to have that if I were the bride and groom. Well, mostly if I were just the groom. If I was the bride and the groom, that would just be a weird situation. Good. Moving along, we are close to the ceremony. And then the photo shoot, where the real fun begins, and that's where we can kind of get creative, do some different things. For now, we're just focusing on getting nice, clean edits, good white balance. You know. Okay, now I think these guys are out of focus, but they're just on the edge of what I can recover, so we're going to do our best. Reset this, open it up. The new texture brush in Lightroom, I'm finding it super handy for such situations. A little bit of clarity, whole lot of sharpness, and obviously that dehaze looks perfect, so we'll just keep it right there. Just kidding. Okay, let's zoom in, see what we got. We are still pretty far from in focus. We're going to delete that one. Nothing I can do. If there was an alternate, now would be the time to grab it. I know there is not. Do you see that error that just popped up? I wonder what it was. I might have to rewind the video. It flashed, but I couldn't read it in time. Wouldn't it be something if my computer caught on fire in the middle of this tutorial? Give this video a like if you think that my computer is about to catch fire. Leave a comment below with your safety recommendations. Okay, now this photo is okay. I could take the amount up, maybe take the exposure up, and that might make it more normal. It just feels like HDR-esque, and I'm not like, there we go, is the shadows. Those pesky shadows. And again, that's the thing about a preset. Sometimes it's just Lightroom doesn't want to work the way it should, and it says, you know what, these shadows, I'm going to make them look absolutely ridiculous. And it's something as simple as just turning the shadows down in the preset fixes the preset totally. So watch out for that. We're going to copy everything except for the crop, paste. Okay, now here's the moment of truth. Do I go with the blues and the super overexposed? I can see if there's any. See, the sky is there. If I could get it back, if I could just get it back, you know what we could do? We could create a brush for the sky. So we're just going to do brush, reset, contrast down, highlights down, and clarity down so I don't get so much like kind of weird jagged edges where things are blown out. Dehaze down a little bit, exposure down. Add a little bit of blue in the temperature. Nope, that's not going to work. Highlights down. I think that's our brush. That's it, right there. We're going to create a new brush. We're going to go up here and save as preset. We'll call it Sky Blowout Smooth. And there you have it. The Sky Blowout Smooth brush, now available for only 3 payments of $49.99. I should probably show you before and after if I'm going to sell this for $150. There you go. I actually think that is quite nice. Take this up maybe a little bit. I love this effect. Isn't that cool? You can just exactly where you want it. You're probably like, Ryan, you've told me about this enough. I don't need to hear it again. I saw you the first time. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And you see, I didn't need to darken that, but I feel like in real life, this is more what your eye would see, so I darkened it down. Good. We are rolling. Just work on our crop because we need... Oh, Lightroom, you're having a conniption. Let's undo. Undo. I'm supposed to show the people how fast I can edit. How am I supposed to do that with you, Lightroom? With difficulty. Now, what I could do for some of these photos, I think it actually looks okay as is, but I could just do a slight bump right in the center. Invert that. So then the person in the center of the photo really pops out. So here's before and after. And you know what? I'm going to keep that. So we'll just copy that, copy it over. Now every time there's an aisle shot that I need to do that, I can just paste it and then move that radial filter where it needs to be. She's already nice and bright compared to everything else, so that's fine. We'll crop in a little bit. Put our eyes more or less on that 2/3 line. Rule of thirds for the win, but this one, for example, take that, take our exposure up. You can see here is without that, and here's with. Just a little pop, little less contrast on her, slightly boosting without going too far. And you don't have to worry about it. That's what I really love about that particular kind of brush, is that you don't need to worry if you happen to forget it's there. It's not going to really make or break your photo because it's super subtle. Now this one looks kind of weird because of how dark it is on top, so we'll grab our gradient filter. Ignore the blown out sky smooth brush. Just brighten it up in the top. Moving along. Same thing. This one we might need to go a little bit further because she is super dark here in the shade of the umbrella. Grab our contrast way down. White balance is really weird, so we'll take that up. Now we'll take our exposure up. Contrast down even more. That might be too much. We need to keep it subtle. Something like that. Darn these infernal umbrellas, you know? There we go. Take this brush and we'll just manually brush on her skin really quick. And of course, I didn't want my blown out sky smooth. I wanted my contrast down. Little bump. Before, after. But you don't have to worry about being super precise because you'll never see, as long as you keep that effect subtle enough. Now this one I'm going to actually invert what I was doing before. Instead of having her be brighter, I'm going to invert that mask because everything else is so dark. We're just going to boost it. Then take our exposure down on everything and our contrast down on everything. Because she's shining bright like a diamond. Now what just happened here? That umbrella, man. It is something else. Okay, we're going to use our sky smooth brush here. Shoot. Better, much better. But again, we've got some serious contrast to fight with here. So we'll take our whites down maybe. Shadows up. And you know what? I have other photos of her. That one looks garbage, so I'm just going to use this one instead. Sometimes it's just not worth the fight. That's what I say. This one we can brush on, and in 2 seconds, looks way better than we ever would have got that other one to look. Take our contrast down a little bit. Again, with this girl and shining bright like a diamond. Invert that mask. We're going to make everything else brighter so that we can make everything darker. Good. Just cruising. Now what I'm wondering as I'm actually standing here, I'm at a sit-stand desk. No, I'm not. As I'm sitting here is, should I just fast forward this? Do you need to watch me edit every single photo? And my overall thought is, if you want to, you can feel free to just skip ahead and watch the next stage of the journey, which is going to be just going back over the photos and kind of checking things over. Or you can like this video and leave me a comment and subscribe for more great content. And download this preset in the description below. I feel with a long video, I should just make advertising breaks. I should rent out the space, read scripts, give you something to listen to other than me talking about nothing. You can see I'm just zooming through, a couple seconds per image. And it's all about having the right preset that just works, right? So here's our before, here's our after. The preset just does most of the work, makes it look pretty good right out of the gate. Now these are looking a little saturated for me, and the reason is that we have this blue sky, and I don't think I want to get rid of it completely. Like, we could do our sky dehaze trick. Where are we? It's down here somewhere. That's a sky blown out smooth. But obviously that looks way too intense, so we'll just not worry about it. Embrace the blue. Let me get a shirt that says embrace the blue. It'll make no sense to anyone, except for maybe you, if you ever meet me in my shirt. Good, that's looking nice. Copy that. Man, love this preset. And the reason I love it so much is because I tried editing this wedding with another set of presets. I will not say which, and it was just a fight. It was so hard to get it to look awesome. Alright, so you can't tell, but my screen recording actually stopped, so I took a really quick break. It is now 7:24, so 16 minutes later, just so we remember to adjust that when we actually look at the amount of time it took to edit this entire wedding. Take our contrast down. So yes, as I was saying, this other preset pack just did not do the same thing. It was a fight every single photo. As the lighting conditions changed, it was just so inconsistent, whereas these I find are so close, generally right across the board. Once you get the white balance dialed in, you get the exposure you like, well then generally you're pretty good, which is a game changer for me. Saves a lot of time, gets that nice, consistent look, and what I love is there's not lots of contrast. It's beautiful, it pops, but it doesn't look edited. It looks pretty darn natural most of the time. This one obviously looks a little too far. We're going to take our saturation down in the yellows. There we go, that's closer. Alright, so we'll copy this guy in case we need it again. And sure enough, here we go. There's a little tip. Sometimes things look a little too unnatural. It might just be the greens and the yellows, so you can take those down in your HSL panel. Okay, I like that. Moving forward. Good. We could try with the desaturated green, see how that looks. Yeah, that's probably better. Apologies if you hear my dog chowing down in the background. He needed dinner as well, so he's just in the middle of that. Good, good, good. The skin tones are looking a little bit red, so I might actually go to my HSL panel here, take the hues of the reds, turn them up a little bit towards green. Yeah, that's way, way better. And then dial it back. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. Just fix those couple of photos. Shoot. As you can see, overall, these photos were shot on a Canon, and I do find that the Canons tend to be a little bit more red right out of the gate with their skin tones, so just watch for that. Take this, desaturate a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is about the worst possible lighting situation where you've got full sun, very, very bright background going on, sun right into the lens, you lose a lot of contrast, and things just look weird. Whereas these other photos taken with the side light here, so much better. But we'll do what we can. And again, apologies for my dog in the background. That's what happens when you share a room with a dog. A room, a house. Condo if we want to be technical. Okay, take that, and here's where our blown out sky smooth brush is really going to come in handy. Take it just like that, dial it back because that's pretty intense. There we go, better. Great, it's amazing how much different the white balance is on this side, hey? Start brightening that up. Lightroom is struggling, and then take this white balance up a little bit. We got a lot of magenta coming off of, I think, these umbrellas. So we'll take this. Let's take a little green in there, a little bit more blue on that. There we go. So here's before, here's after. That one looks good. If it ain't broke, although that one needs to be level. Crooked lines, man. There we go, and we'll use our sky brush here. We can't fix it, but we can mitigate. Now this is where you really start to notice, okay, that's out of focus. Just delete. You really start to notice Lightroom struggling, A, because I am recording, and B, because I didn't generate those smart previews. So I think that's really holding us back here. You can get through your editing a lot faster with a faster machine / making use of all the tools that Lightroom has to offer. This one I'm very borderline on keeping, honestly. I think if it had been cropped here, kind of at their waist, that would have been fine, but as it is, it just looks really strange, so I'm going to delete that one. Good. Moving on up. Again, we're just adjusting exposure, crop, next. And in a perfect world, that's all you ever have to do. Now, we don't live in a perfect world, so we're going to have to do more occasionally, but hopefully you're catching my drift. Good, and that's looking pretty darn blue, so we'll take that. I thought this photo was kind of interesting in its own sort of way. Make sure their feet are right on that third line. And we'll try the skin pop. That's probably not going to do it because our feet are in full shade under that dress. So reset. Do our classic contrast white brush. There we go. See what I mean though? Sometimes skin tones just don't work because Lightroom is being strange. So we can try the skin bump. And that's maybe going too far now. So we'll do it manually. Something like that. We can maybe dial back. I bet you it's the dehaze again. Let's see. Yep, it's the dehaze. Take the dehaze, turn it up just a little, but not as much as it was. Okay. Now the issue with this photo is none of them are in focus. It's just the background. And I thought that that might be kind of cool. But in reality, it just looks like a photo that the focus didn't work. So we're going to delete. When I have 600 photos to get through, I feel no pain whatsoever in deleting just a couple of the ones that really aren't going to be as magical. Because at the end of the day, too, you have to think, okay, well, if your client receives 500 okay-ish photos versus 300 amazing photos, which is going to have a better effect? And the answer is probably the ones that are amazing. Okay, we'll contrast a little bit of sharpness in there. Good. again with the skin tones. What lens is this? It's the 85, which apparently has a very, very different contrast in colors than the 35. But we'll deal. We'll make it work. Okay, add a little bit of this. A little extra pop sauce with that preset. This one, the white balance is too cold, so we'll warm it up. And this is where things really start to slow down, because obviously in these bright, sunny days, you're going to have a lot more trouble getting a decent photo every single time, because you have to adjust every photo by a little bit, just with the contrast and getting the exposure just dialed in. Way harder than an overcast day. And Lightroom is just killing me with the delay. But you can see we're still making pretty good time. It is 7:36. We've been going for about an hour and a half, I think. And we are 219 photos in, so not quite halfway. But at this rate, we should be done in about 3 hours total. Love that shot. Just love it when the colors work, you know? And then you have a shot like this where the colors just don't work, where Lightroom doesn't even show up. So my hunch is if we take our preset up here, take our exposure back down, dehaze down just a little bit, and white balance down a little more. There we go. Voila. And we'll just copy that and see if that will apply to this next guy. Bingo. You can see how dark it is looking in the middle here, so I'm just going to grab radial filter, contrast down, whites up. Bam. Oh no, I'm getting the Apple wheel of death. I might need to pause and let my computer cool down or something. Let's see, do I have any other programs running I can close? Nope. Good. A little contrast, try that. Now that actually looks a little warm in comparison to these other shots, because it is 5600 versus 5400 everywhere else. So we'll try that. If you're wondering how I'm doing this right now, it's just with the period. You can adjust which effect your plus and minus keys are going to adjust by hitting period. But I just find that the exposure, honestly, is the most handy thing in there, so I keep it on there. We can maybe use the texture. No, that looks weird. Try a little more preset. There we go. Now the really confusing thing is that the white balance is so all over the place, even though the lighting isn't changing much. So I wonder why that happened. If a representative from Canon is watching, I would appreciate some answers. But here's an example of where the presets, doesn't matter which preset you apply, even this preset is going to give you some strange looking results at first. And you saw how weird that photo was. Let's jump back here. So if I actually go down to my before the exposure adjustment, here's before. You'd think that that preset just looks awful, but then when you actually just adjust the exposure properly, it looks pretty normal. So exposure, white balance. Once you get those dialed in, most of the time your preset will look 10 times better. So she's in focus. They are not. Remove that photo. It's literally running so slow that I'm using this little preview window here while I'm waiting for this one to show up. Exposure to the rescue again. And voila, we have the kiss. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached it. We did it, you and I, together. And I think the reason the white balance is actually going crazy is because it's only happening with these really wide shots. And you know why? Because this blue sky, the blue mountains, and the blue lake in behind trick the camera into thinking that, oh, things are blue, we need to make it warmer. When in reality, or cooler. No, that doesn't make sense. That's the opposite of what it would be. Never mind. The theory is still out. And you know what? That brush almost worked except for around here. So we're going to have to erase. And then dial it in so it's very subtle. Good. Again, we're looking too cold. Other than that, we're pretty good.
you can see where the two cameras just weren't quite synced up, so some of these are out of order. That's not in focus, but I kind of like the moment, so I'm going to take this brush, just add a little bit of clarity, some sharpness onto his face, just to make it usable. Love that moment. Now, because she's wearing a white dress, it's going to be brighter than absolutely everything else in here, so we're going to take the highlights down just on that dress. And then take the exposure down just a little bit in that one area. There we go. Now we can darken everything else. Good. And I'm just going to sync. Get one of these set the way I like it. And sync across all these images. Everything except for the crop, because they should be pretty consistent with the walk down the aisle. Good, looks good. All right, we are officially past halfway done. Look at us go. I'm going to brighten up the center of this image. So this one is just really weird. I don't exactly know what's going on. We'll try dialing that back. It might be the dehaze again. When in doubt, it's probably the dehaze acting up. Yeah, way better with the dehaze down. Strange, eh? Now, family photos again, anything that's going to be consistently the same across multiple images, I will do my very best to make use of that and just sync it ahead of time. So we're going to adjust the blues, get things dialed in the way we like it. Massive difference in how much more natural that looks versus this. Okay, so we copy that, get our crop right. Okay, now we can take that and sync it across all of these family photos coming up, and hopefully we'll be pretty close. And if I make an adjustment, I just sync it to the rest of them. Now that looks a little bit green, so we're going to actually undo, maybe -6 instead. Perfect. And I can maybe take the saturation down in those blues a little bit. Not a ton, just a little bit. Even the yellows if we wanted, and the greens. probably fine. There we go. That's better. Looks like there's a massive change in camera settings, obviously, so copy. And once in a while, it can be helpful actually just to hit that reset button, see what the photo looked like out of camera, and if you're on track or if you're just taking it too far. Like, for example, that's looking a little bit too blue. Maybe the contrast could go up a little bit, or the shadows could go down slightly. Yeah, that's way more natural. With family photos, generally, you'll go through and grab the best one that you can of each group. But if there's more than one good one, I'll grab a couple if there's some variety between the expressions, just so that they can choose. Because, the bride might be happy with her expression, but the groom's like, oh, I wish there's one that I didn't look like such a doof. Spoken as a past groom who has looked like a doof much of his life. Great, we're rolling pretty good here. Now he's a little dark in the background of this photo. I'm just going to make an adjustment layer. Reset, contrast down a little, whites up a little bit. Brush that on, just brighten him up just a little bit. So before, after. So again, if it looks funny, might be the dehaze. Try just taking that down. I think that looks more natural. Looks good. She's a little dark on the end, so we're just going to brush. Shoot. Gradient filter, rather. That's probably too far. There. I'm going to crop out as much as I can because I really don't like that school bus in the background. I think it might be cooler if you can't see the top of that concrete. I think that's hilarious. Brighten him up just a little bit. Looks good. Crop again. Get rid of the bus. So you can see how much better these photos look just now that they're out of that super high contrasty situation. The light makes such a big difference, guys, in your edits, in your photos. If you can get good light, your photos will look 10 times better. So obviously this was closer to sunset. It was out of that high contrast environment, no longer shooting straight into the sun and losing all of our contrast by having the lens facing the sun. All sorts of different things like that all make a difference. That one's looking a little bit cold, maybe. Try just warming it up a smidge. Also, all this negative space, I don't need so much sky. Really not necessary, and there's just more distractions going on. Same goes for this one. Man, Lightroom is just not loving me right now. Now, obviously, I haven't said anything in quite some time. I've just been editing these photos and kind of going through. I just wanted to say what's really interesting is how white balance isn't always accurate inside of Lightroom. And by that, I don't mean just that Lightroom's auto white balance isn't right, because that happens all the time. But what I mean is sometimes what you think the white balance should be isn't actually what it is. So for example, this should actually be more like temperature, probably 6500 is what I would guess, because we're in really, really heavy shade outside, whereas, sunlight is 5400. But even 5400 looks pretty garbage until you get down kind of to the high 4000s. That's where things start to look natural. So white balance in Lightroom is an imperfect art. It's about knowing what looks right rather than knowing the exact numbers, because if I just went with daylight, I guarantee you this would just be the wrong white balance. That's too warm. At least to my eyes. You might look at it and say, that looks brilliant, Ryan. You are full of hogwash. In which case, you do you. I'm not going to say what you should or shouldn't do. And now back to silence as I edit. So again, their skin look kind of weird here, but I bet you if we just take our white balance down to say 5000, yeah, problem pretty much figured out. We can maybe take our shadows up a little bit, take our dehaze down, that culprit. There we go. Now I actually think these might look nicer without, yeah, there we go, without the saturated blues. That's just a preference thing. This gives a little bit more focus to the photo. This one is not working for me, so I could either put it in black and white or get rid of it. Since we have so many of the vineyard, I'm actually going to just remove we'll switch back to the blue sky. But we'll take it and we'll make it more of a darker blue. Good. They actually look kind of awkward in that photo. I'll just get rid of it. Because the sky is just white, where possible, I'm just going to crop as much of it out as I can because it really isn't adding anything to the photo. That particular photo I just don't like. You can see what a massive difference white balance is making. So as I mess around here, if I can find the right white balance, it's going to make all the difference. We have so many vineyard ones, and this one is just looking kind of hokey, so I'm going to move on. And instantly, this one's better just from the other side. Good, but I still don't like it because of the sky. And we have some really great other vineyard stuff and a sunset shoot, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to take the ones that look good and forget about the others. So it's kind of a secondary culling process, if you will. There's some weird smoky things going on in the background too that I don't want to have to worry about. Let's just make sure I don't have anything. I'm not creating those, am I? Nope. I was worried there for a second. I had the spot removal tool on or something. But no, it's some other cloud or something that was happening that day. This one, we'll just take the highlights down for her flowers. So much better without the sky in there. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Do you prefer with the sky or without the sky? I think as soon as you crop out the sky intentionally in your camera, everything starts to look better. You have more of those moody images rather than kind of just ugly and weird. In fact, that's too weird. We're just going to keep moving. That I can maybe add a little bit more contrast to those flowers, make them pop. Good. And I know we have so much vineyard stuff that I'm not sweating it, not putting all of these in here. Now, obviously, if this is all I have, I would work with it to make it work. And you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get rid of that blue. Get rid of the blue in the sky, but then I get rid of the blue in his suit. So maybe I could take the luminance up on the blues and hide them a little bit. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll hide the blues. Little trick for you. Mm-hmm. So there's some really weird reflections going on the outside of this building, and that's just because of the vines. Literally, the sun is hitting the vines are reflecting onto this building. But if I take the saturation down, I can probably make it a little less weird. and take the greens more towards a red. Slightly better. We'll do the same thing here. So much of photography is just learning to look and see light in a way that you don't normally see it when you're not paying attention. As you start to pay attention, you get used to, okay, well, these trees are reflecting that sunlight, and so there's a skin cast on this skin, even though I don't see it with my eyes. I know it's there. And then you can plan around that. You can say, okay, let's not take the photos under the trees or across the street from the trees. Let's take the photos over here where we have this, you understand, somewhere better to work with. Good enough. Oops. If there's anything I know, it's that the shot of the wine bottles matters the most. Just kidding. Okay, so something like this. The background, full sun. The foreground is shade, so I know that there's going to be some blue on this sign, so we can take that, and we can also increase the blues just to make that sign brighten up. There we go. We can maybe take the saturation and the greens down too. It's a little much. Okay, here's a situation where our sky is blown out as can be. We can see, can we get it back? Not really, so we'll take it down. We'll take our clarity down like that. That way we can brighten everything else up. Honestly, not too attached to that photo. Don't think it's very nice. We'll delete. I would rather delete a meh photo than put it in there. If I have lots of other awesome photos, it'll just make the whole experience better for the couple when all their photos are wow shots. Okay, so I think dehaze is working against me again. Again, weird photo, just not working. I'm going to delete it. Not in focus, but that's the bride's dad. So if I can make it happen, I'd love to make it happen for her. So we'll grab that photo, zoom in here, add a little bit of clarity, a little bit of sharpness. Here's that texture I was talking about. Yeah, that's doable. Here's another one where she's shade, background is sun, so it's either going to be way too warm in the background or way too cool on her face. But not much we can do about that. We just sort of have to deal with it. Expose for the skin, edit around the skin, and the background is what it is. Not worth keeping. Nice. Again, it's dark up here, so I'm going to drag gradient filter down, just boost the whites from that direction. And then this sign in itself is reflecting all that light. It's very, very light when everything else is dark. So just take our highlights down a little bit. Not too much, just enough. There we go. P.S. That is the most awesome welcome sign ever. Pretty sure it's a Parks and Rec playoff, so instead of treat yourself, it's seat yourself. Maybe, maybe not. If it is, mad respect. Put a little bit of clarity, a little bit of dehaze. Good. So again, he is right under a tungsten light. Weird mixed light situation here, so I'm going to grab gradient filter. Oh, not going to do that. Going to grab a gradient filter over like that. Just add some blue from that direction and hopefully kind of find a place in the middle where we can rest. Good. That's better. Here's before, after. Not great, but better. Sometimes that's the best you can do. I could take the blues down in saturation. That might help a little bit too. So let's just show you. There you go. Take those blues down. So much better. So here's before, here's after. Just kind of cleans it up. I'm actually going to copy that just so we have it every time we need it. So it's these mixed lighting situations that are genuinely the hardest to edit, because it's like no matter what you do, if the light was not good to begin with, if you're working with daylight and tungsten and all sorts of different weirdness going on, it's just going to look weird no matter what. And that is kind of the limitations of shooting on a camera that is not as good as your eye is at adjusting to things and making things look normal. Because when your eyes walk into a place, they will naturally adjust to make things look the way that they should. So even if you're in a room that is full of tungsten light, when you look at a tomato, the tomato doesn't look yellow or orange, it still looks red because your eyes adjust, whereas your camera doesn't have that same ability. And that kind of is what your white balance is doing. It's telling the camera, okay, this is what white should be, so it compensates with everything else. But it's not perfect. And so when it comes to mixed light, where your eye can naturally look at it and say, okay, this is supposed to be skin color, this is supposed to be that, your camera cannot. It can do a set white balance, and that's about it. Now this is a cool photo, except for so blown out and bright in the back, and his head is all red. We've got this really weird blotchy skin situation. We'll try taking the contrast down, cooling it down maybe a little bit, brighten it. I'm going to do what I can. Try taking that down. That's about as close as we'll get. That looks good. Maybe a little bit darker, actually. Yes. So again, maybe we take the saturation out of the blues. That way that distraction out the window is gone. So you can see the camera was having a hard time here knowing what was what. And so even though I'm messing around trying to find kind of a sweet spot again, I don't know if I'm going to. And I know there's a different photo of her holding this baby, so that one I can let go of. Maybe this one I'll have better luck. Take you down. A little less magenta. Still way too warm here, so cool it, cool it. That is about as close as we'll get, and we'll take the saturation down in the blues. There we go. So here's before, after, still looking pretty natural-ish. Definitely better than we were when we just had the preset by itself. So again, it's not necessarily the preset, it's more just the fact that it needs to be dialed in properly. So now we can copy this one, take all that hard work, and deposit it into this photo. Are we in focus? Moderately. And since the other one was, we'll delete that. So here's another example. We'll reset, try and get an idea of what it looked like naturally. I think that's pretty close. You might be better at this than me, and you're looking at it saying, no, Ryan, no, that's incorrect. If it is, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. Good. We could take the exposure down on her. Add a little contrast. Highlights down. Exposure down. I'm just not feeling it. Not super happy with it. It's all in the white balance. If you get that right, everything else is far, far easier. That's a lot closer. Then our blues, we'll take that saturation down again from that window light. And there's some weird funky green on that seat, so we'll take that down too. Now, if you're wondering what cameras these were taken on, it's 5D Mark IVs. Those are Canons, Sigma and Canon glass, kind of a mixture of the two. And one of the nice parts about a professional grade DSLR, doesn't have to be Canon, but The great thing about them is that they have so much more wiggle room in the actual raw file. So you'll see a few of the photos that I actually edited here. I added like 1.5 to 2 stops of extra light to it, and it still looked pretty good. So the beauty is your photos can be way further out, and you can save them a lot more easily than if you're shooting on a T3i or something like that. In fact, yesterday I edited an engagement shoot on a GH5, or I shot and edited one. Now that is a little bit too heavy-handed. I can really see my brush marks there, so we'll just dial things back. And what I was surprised by is how the low light was so much harder to get right and so much more limited. Now I know I have a lot of other shots of her, so I'm not going to worry about this one with that light being a little distracting. Now this is so unfortunate that this guy happened to be in this sun, and the couple here is right in darkness. I sense a lot of work on the horizon. And of course she's out of focus, so I'll just grab that. Add a little bit of sharpness, a little texture. Good. This one I'm not even going to worry about trying to save. Maybe take the saturation out of the blues. There's not much you can do in this kind of a shot. That's all right. Just take the contrast down here. Now the reason she looks so funky is because of the videographer's light that he set up is really quite a harsh light on her. So super high contrast. Might look good on video, but certainly not ideal. I would have preferred just a nice window light. You can see how much brighter she is than anything else. Now this photo is interesting. The white balance was so far out, and the reason is the camera actually saw her pink dress, compensated for that, and set the auto white balance to this, which is far more green than it needed to be. So now we're at the sunset shoot. Obviously, we are almost through this wedding, probably another 30 or 40 images. The sunset shoot, unfortunately, took place kind of quite a bit before sunset, before I would have liked to. So unfortunately, these photos are going to take more work than they would have otherwise. And the reason for that is because obviously I'm going to have to go in and brush their skin, cool it off so that I can maximize the dynamic range and kind of get the sunset back, if you will. So I'm going to just go ahead and make a little preset for my brush. I've got it kind of the way that I like it, so I'm going to go down here. We're going to call it Sunset Skin, and we'll put 0, 1, so hopefully it's at the top here. Good. And now we're just going to take Sunset Skin and brush it on top of, you guessed it, their skin at sunset. You'll see that it's just removing some saturation, some contrast, blending things very slightly. And wherever it's too much, I'm just going to take it back down a little bit. And unfortunately, it's a bit of a necessary evil. I thought to myself, you know, can I get away without it? Unfortunately, the answer is kind of no. It adds too much. Makes it way more organic, way less edited, smooths out their skin tones so nicely. Now I could use the auto mask on here and it might be a little bit faster at getting their skin. But I think I'm good like this. Only takes a couple of seconds per photo, and the nice part is that the preset does most of the work here. I might actually take my saturation up a little bit. It's looking a little heavy-handed here, so we'll just grab our saturation, take that up. Continue our quest. I'm telling you, contrast down, whites up, that by itself is the best brush in all of Lightroom. So transparent, so effective. Very good. We can take some red out of their skin as well. I might update my brush with that. I'll take the red down by, say, -7. You can see what a big difference it makes. So here's before I actually apply that brush. If it will ever load, here's before and after. Massive, massive difference. But subtle, like you wouldn't guess that it's there, and you don't have to be perfect with your actual brushing, which to me is a really big deal. Now this one I might actually just need to dial back that. Yeah, that's way better. Copy that because I like it. Now I like this photo, but it looks really HDR. So I'm going to see if I can take those shadows off. Maybe that's what's causing this issue. Probably our dehaze brush is contributing in some way. There we go. That's a lot more natural. There we go. I'm going to do a second brush on their skin, just with some contrast and some whites. That's better. There we go. So you can see our shadows are just too high at this point. That's the thing about nighttime. The light changes so much, and I honestly find that nighttime presets, you really can't predict what's going to work and what won't. Sometimes a preset will work great. Other times it just looks better to go straight raw from camera and just add a little contrast and be done. Especially when you're working with images that are already high ISO. You just don't have that much latitude anymore to adjust things, and so you kind of have to stick with what you already got fresh out of camera. It's a little bit blue. We'll go 5800 maybe. Yeah, sure, give that a try. Use our little brush. That's probably too much. Something around there. Now, one thing you can do, if you have this preset pack and you have all of our preset brushes, is we can go in, add a radial filter, and go to where it says Effects down here, and we have a sun flare special effect. And I think it'd be cool to add a little bit of a flare over here as she's walking in sunset, so we'll just invert that. Drag it like that. So here's without and with. Just adds a little interest, and if you want to make it more subtle, we'll just grab our amount slider, drag that down, just like that. So before and after. Really makes it kind of interesting, hey? All right, so that's our sunset shoot. We've just got a few more dance photos, and we are done. Now, the thing is about this particular dance floor, I know for a fact that it was very dark, very contrasty. I'm just going to get things set up here, sync it across, and hopefully it'll be a pretty quick process to get it all done. So we're just going to sync all of that, except for maybe white balance and exposure. And then fade that preset up as necessary, shot by shot. So you can see at this point, it was the least ideal lighting situation of all time. We've got these big, big windows, full dark skin. Might be a little bit interesting to edit. I know we have some better shots than that of them. So I'm going to delete this one actually. There we go. Like I said, way better. Nighttime photos, of all of the photos that exist, are the hardest to edit and get right. And I think that's because most of the time it's high ISO. You don't have a lot of kind of wiggle room when you're shooting in high ISO to begin with when you're editing the photos, and so everything just doesn't seem to work the way that it should. So my advice for you is start just with the raw, kind of take it up from there. These presets, I'm pretty much turning off this profile section because I find when you get too dark, it just stops working properly. We want to take our dehaze off. We want to basically shoot straight from camera, and if you want to, you can experiment with the actual in-camera profile. So we could go down here into camera matching and just browse in here and see if any of these do better with the colors. Personally, I'm going to stick with what I had there because that was close enough for me. But sometimes that can help. Yesterday was editing a session, and I found that the in-camera profile was just way, way better than anything else I could cook up. So there's a little tip for you there. And you see how much better the colors are in this photo because it's ISO 640 instead of our other ones, which were ISO 2000. So it really does make a massive difference. So again, shots like this, ugly background, I have better ones. I'm just going to delete it for the good of everyone. And I seem to be adding a bit of dehaze to all of these, so I'm going to sync that across as well. We have 32 left. Now, getting these dance photos was actually a challenge, and the reason for that is because it would have been way better to shoot in the direction with the window light. So all of this light from these windows would have been really awesome. However, the problem is those ugly shots I showed you, the couple that I deleted, well, they were taken with the good light, but obviously good light, terrible background. So it's kind of choose your poison. Do you want a bad background and decent lighting on them, or do you want an ugly background or a nice background with more challenging light? There we go. There's a videographer hero shot. All gone. And we just got some of these. And if you're wondering how these were taken, it's just with a flash and a really long shutter. So you drop your shutter speed to, say, 1 second, 2 seconds, whatever it is, and then you have a flash that fires. because the flash is only on for an instant, you get that initial kind of image, and then the kind of movement afterwards is by moving, wiggling, shaking, whatever, your camera after the flash fires. And so it's kind of a long exposure that gets baked in, and you get these really cool light effects from wherever the lights were as it tracks your movement. So that's how you do that. Maybe we'll do a future YouTube tutorial. If you'd like a tutorial on that, just leave me a comment below. Nice part about these kind of, let's call them artistic shots, is you don't have to worry about things looking too natural or organic, because they were never natural or organic to begin with. So other than the fact that she has Oompa Loompa skin here, which we will try and do something about. We'll just take this, add some blue to the skin. Oh, that looks so much more normal. Life is good. And there you have it. It is 9:04 p.m. minus our 15-minute break. That was a total of 550. Well, I think we started with 567 photos edited in just a couple of hours. So you too can edit a wedding in under a day. It doesn't need to take you weeks to edit an entire wedding if you're using the right kind of presets, the right strategy, you call things properly, and you're just adjusting using your keyboard shortcuts, all those kind of tips that we covered inside of here. Well, you too can get these kind of speed results, if you will. Now, this was not an example of perfection. I'm still a work in progress, still learning things. So if you have tips for me, my editing strategy, things I could do better, please leave them in the comments below. If this video was helpful for you, which I hope it was, because it was 2 hours long, and if it wasn't helpful, you wouldn't be listening to me right now, please do me a favor, hit that like button, make sure you leave a comment below, subscribe for more great content, tutorials, resources, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.